Welcome to Kingdoms Forlorn, a 1 to 4 player, cooperative, narrative-driven dungeon delver boss battler by Into the Unknown Studios. This is their tabletop simulator demo that just went live yesterday after a huge, very, very successful start to their Kickstarter, which was a couple of days ago. I believe at the time of this recording, they're almost at $1 million Canadian. Which is absolutely insane. So it's huge congrats to them and their team, because I have been looking forward to this game for a while, and everything's shaping up to be pretty much everything I've wanted to and more. They've already unlocked a bunch of different stretch goals and everything like that, and so I wanted to have just like I did with the Townsfolk Tussle tabletop simulator demo. I wanted to make this introduction to the game just to show you guys the game flow, show you guys exactly how to set up the tabletop simulator demo, and get things going as quick as possible. I've spent 5 to 6 hours scouring through the rulebook yesterday, trying to figure out as much as I can to get the basic gist of the game so I can show it off to you guys in the best way possible. This is a massive game, and it's a very large undertaking to play it solo, especially because this is meant to be played with 4 players, especially they are going to be having a solo mode for the game. However, we do not have any information on that yet, or exactly how that's going to work, so I am unable to show you that part of it. If you are a solo player, I apologize, but you can obviously sort of make your own little house rules on how you want to play the game solo and manage things, just because there is a lot to this game, and there's a lot to manage if you are alone. So just bear that in mind. Definitely try and grab some friends that have Tabletop Simulator if you want to dive this in yourself. So I won't be going over all of the different aspects of the lore, all of the niche different things about the mechanics or the Kickstarter stuff they revealed. This is purely about the Tabletop Simulator demo, purely about the general gameplay flow and getting things up and running for yourself. So obviously the Tabletop Simulator demo has done most of the setup yourself. In the prototype rulebook, they do mention some things that are already done for you, such as choosing which kingdom you're going to be going on to. Obviously, we do only have one kingdom to do in this Tabletop Simulator demo. There is also only one mob clash and one boss clash, the 2 different sort of fights that you can encounter in this demo, with varying degrees of levels, so you can replay it at harder difficulties if you want to, after you unlock some gear and abilities. And then you're going to be wanting to, of course, choose your knights that you're going to be delving with, and their gear loadouts, as well as starting attribute loadouts, which are going to be your peril arc and heroic arc generally. So off the start, you can start with different equipment, but as you also progress your narrative story, which is sort of the big part of this game, where each knight has its own little storybook. Also, I apologize for the hitching in this. It does only hitch on this particular table, so I don't know if it has to do with some of the scripting that Into the Unknown Studios did with it, but I apologize for the freezing every now and then. That doesn't happen for any other mod that I load, so I'm not really sure what's going on there, but I do apologize about that. But yes, every knight has their own story that they're going across. So this is sort of where the solo operative aspect comes into play, where every knight has their own objectives that they're trying to complete while sort of partying with everyone else. While everyone's overarching goal is to survive the delve and to defeat the big bad boss at the very end, throughout that you will be getting these things called clues that'll sort of be a representation of the progress that you are going for your specific storylines. So these little icons here where there's the different colored clues. So you have your errant, which is green, you have your mystic, which is blue, historic, which is yellow, and martial, which is red. So different knights will require different combinations of these clues to progress their story. And of course, as you get a certain required amount of clues and fulfill the required situation, you will read in the storybook and read out the narrative story, and whatever results or tests or rewards or negative outcomes will come of that. So your Tabletop Simulator demo also will not look like this. They do only provide the one, so I would definitely recommend copying and pasting the knight book, just so you have one for each knight open, so you can just sort of keep them on those pages, because otherwise everything is just in one book. So, and then you also should have one copied and pasted for the generic random encounters that you'll come across in the delve phase, which is sort of the explorative phase in this game. So obviously that is sort of the general setup. What you'll also need to do is a partial setup of the clash, which is going to be the mob clash, which is going to be the first fight you encounter in this demo. It's going to be against the Iron Cast Dead. You're going to want to take the, there's different levels of both body part cards and AI cards, or body part cards being BP. And these are going to represent sort of the different mob standees that are on here. And the game is going to want you to shuffle these. Give these a shuffle. You're going to choose 4 of the level 1 cards by random. You're going to choose 3 of the level 2 cards, and you're going to choose 1 level 3 card. And you don't have to shuffle them now, but if you want to, you can. Those will be distributed at the start of the clash, mob clash phase when you actually get to it, but we don't have to worry about that now. That's sort of just the only setup you need to do for that. The next setup you're going to have to do is for the actual Del phase. So it's going to alternate. First, you're going to go Del phase until you hit the first mob clash fight. You're going to do that, and then there's going to be another Del phase after the first mob clash fight, and then hopefully, if you, obviously, there's a little bit of a timer, hopefully you can get to the very last thing, which is the boss fight at the very end. But for setting up your story, you're going to first read, if you're playing with other players, of course, or if you want to read by yourself, you're going to be reading their character introductions. You're going to be also reading the Chapter 1 and also the Chapter 1 special rules and objectives. And that'll be all you read. Don't make sure not to read any of the other stuff here, because that is going to be for when you're in the middle of the actual game, when you fulfilled the appropriate requirements. And there are going to be some... so after you've done that, and after you sort of get an idea of who these characters are and who these knights are and what their goal is for this delve, you're gonna be getting the exploration deck ready. So these are just going to be random events and things that will trigger at the end of each knight's turn when you're exploring the world. So how you're going to set up this is there are 4 specific knight adventure cards that will trigger essentially a kingdom adventure, which are random events that you can be found on a sort of a D100 table that is up here. And so each knight has their own specific one. However, Fleischritter, who is one of the knights, a big man, a meat-eating knight, he has a special objective in his rule book that tells you to shuffle in an extra special event card. But first things before that, there's a generic deck of 12 exploration cards. And again, everything that I'm talking about, like I said, this is a prototype demo, so obviously there's going to be a lot more of this kind of stuff in the full final game. But of course, I'm not going to comment on every single time I encounter something that's obviously going to be more fleshed out in the final version. So to get this exploration deck ready, you're going to make a deck of 12. You're going to give it a shuffle. Then you're going to split it up into two separate decks that have 6 cards each. So once you've done that, you're going to then take the 4 unique knight adventure cards. You're going to flip those over, you're going to give those a shuffle, and you're going to place 2 in each deck. So you'll also want to make a note of which is Exploration Deck 1 and Exploration Deck 2. Because for the first delve phase, you're going to be going through and each turn resolving an exploration card from the first deck. Once your deck is fully depleted, the next time you're supposed to draw an exploration card, you will then start the mob clash fight phase. And then once you're done that fight phase, you're going to come back and start delving again, and then you're going to be using the deck number 2. So make sure you make a note of which one's which. So we're going to take 2 cards from the Knight-specific adventure decks. We're going to choose 2 of those and put them in the first deck, and then we're going to choose the other 2 and put them in the second deck. And then because of Fleischritter's special objective, which you can actually see in his little book here, you can see at the Chapter 1 Special Rules and Objectives, you can see shuffle the Fleischritter's special event exploration card into the second deck, but do not look. So we will take that special objective card and we'll put it in the second deck here and give both decks a shuffle. So after you're done that, you're actually ready to start the game. So at the delve phase, you're going to have different... There's also a little cheat sheet as well from the Tabletop Simulator demo. So the delve round is going to consist of 4 different steps. You're going to have your travel step, which you're going to move into a different kingdom tile and resolve different token clues and stuff like that. You're going to then do the exploration step, which is going to be resolving one of those exploration cards I just talked about. After that, you're going to have the activation step, which you're going to be able to use your specific knight abilities, or if you are in the second delve phase and you have found the appropriate tile card, you can trigger the boss clash. And then the last step is passing just the party leader token and proceeding on a new round. And then it'll go on from there. And also, speaking of those knight ability cards, you're going to also, they start on the clash side. They're actually dual-sided cards, so you're going to want to make sure to flip them over to the delve side beforehand. When you actually start the game and you're able to choose your loadout, knight ability cards are one of the things that you can actually choose. The game already starts you at your max amount. Every single knight has a certain hand limit. Each knight already starts with their max amount of ability cards that they have available. And depending on which knight you are, you might have more, might have less. For example, Renholder actually has 7 cards total that they can use. And these cards you can use in that activation phase of the delve phase. Otherwise, you will have to use them in very specific points in the game when it mentions it. For example, this card, Knight Tactics, is when you are about to draw an exploration card. Renholder could use this if they wanted to, so they wouldn't have to wait for the activation phase. They do also have different timers on them. So this is sort of the time it takes for you to get that card back into your hand. So you can either have a card discarded, which means that you actually won't get it until the end of the you won't get it into the rest phase, I believe, which is after the clash phase. So you won't get it for a while. So those you should use pretty sparingly. You also have the delayed time effect, where in the clash phase, it'll actually when you go to the refresh step on your turn, any delayed cards will go to the sync section, and then any sync cards will actually go back in your hand. So it's sort of like a 2-step refresh phase. Now, for these cards as well, because they are dual-sided, that does mean if you are using some in the delve phase here, you won't be able to use them in the clash phase, which when you enter the clash phase, you'll actually flip them over so you can use them when you're fighting. So that's why you have to be extremely cautious of and sparingly. It's like an interesting stamina system, which is pretty cool. Also, one thing I didn't talk about is the character sheet. You are going to have a character sheet. You don't really have to worry about this too much, at least right now. And also in the demo, I don't think there's like a ton of different things that interact with this. But it'll also keep track of your choices and what happens when you die in this game. Dying is not the end in this game. Dying will generally just sort of put you on a different path for depending on how far you progressed in your story. And it keeps track of other stats as well that you can potentially get buffs for different tests and things of that nature. In the full game, you will be able to sort of take your knight to different play groups if you want to, and integrate them into other people's campaigns, which is a really, really cool aspect. And so that's sort of what the character sheet is for, just so you make sure to keep track of your progress over all of your different sort of play sessions. So we've got everything all set up. I think we're ready to start. You're going to be choosing randomly the person who goes first for the first delve turn. We'll just have old Sir Sanch here going first. Also, of course, I did not read through their story introductions. Again, that would just make this video way, way too long. I will be doing sort of a actual playthrough of this game in the future. I'm not really sure how I'm going to approach that, just because, again, like I mentioned before, doing the whole controlling every single character is a lot. So I might just do it like maybe one video per character and sort of just mainly focus on their narrative story for each one. However, we can keep track of at least their tokens and their clues. I'm not going to be reading over every story event, but maybe we'll come across some story things. One nice thing that you might want to do as well is when you do actually end up reading which clues they need, just take some clues and place them underneath the appropriate storybook. That way you just have a quick reference of exactly which clues each knight needs. And again, this is more for if you are trying to sort of manage everything yourself. It just makes it a little bit easier, and I found this method to be pretty useful just for making sure I know who's looking for what. Because when you are resolving and gaining clues as you explore, only the knights that are looking for those clues will actually gain them. So if we pass onto a tile that gives knights a yellow clue, only Kara and Sir Sanch will actually get those, and Renholder and Fleischritter will not. So, all right, I think that's all the main setup is out of the way. I think we're actually ready to play. And again, we're not going to be, even though I did do a full sort of round and fight with the Townsfolk Tussle introduction, because there's so much to this game, I am only going to just show you like maybe 1 or 2 turns of each thing, just so you know the basic rules of it. So you can see on the little initial tile card, you're going to start with a crossroads, and this is where every delve will begin in this tabletop simulator demo. And each little direction has a icon of what kind of clue you'll get when going through that path. Additionally, it will tell you the size of the next tile card you're going to be revealing. So you can see everyone here starts with M, but it might be XL, L, or S to represent the different card sizes for your different tiles. And different tiles will bring different negative and positive effects. So for example, if you're moving onto a small tile, it'll actually reduce the threat that you have, and we'll get to that in a second. If you go on a medium tile, you'll actually increase your threat. But as you go on larger tiles, even though your threat increases, it gives you more chances to get clues. And also, if you are on that second delve phase, it'll give you more chances of encountering the boss, so you can get right in and get that fight going, because you do end up losing if you don't find the boss in time. There are sort of some fail states, at least at ending your delve run. It doesn't necessarily mean your character dies and that's the absolute end, but it will mean the end of your delve if your threat gets to 10, and the next time you gain threat, you'll end up losing, and same goes for your curse. If you max out on curse, and the next time you get curse, you will also lose. You also lose if all the knights are dead at the same point, or if you are in the travel step and you cannot move in any direction and you get locked in. So the city is ever changing. The fog is hiding different pathways. So there are different, things like panzer gates, for example, that can potentially lock you in. And if all of those entrances are locked in and there's absolutely no way for you to get out through abilities or something like that, that's also another fail state. So first things off, we are going to choose a direction. We are going to be starting with Sir Sanch as the party leader, so he gets to decide on where to go. Now, we know that from his store, we are looking for green and yellow tokens, so we can likely choose one of those. Let's just go to the left and choose that. And as you choose which tile you're going to be wanting exploring to, you might want to also just move, because you're generally going to keep moving in that direction. This game might take up a fair amount of space, depending on how things go. So once you've chosen which direction you want to go to, you're going to reveal that specific tile card. So we're going to reveal a medium-sized card here, and we're going to flip it over, and we're going to align it. Now, all of the cards should stay aligned as everything should be upright. For example, you're not going to twist this and have things off at an angle. You want to keep things as they are. Now there are certain things that might make that invalid. So if there was another card here, for example, from a different path that we took, and it overlapped, that would make it an invalid path. So we actually wouldn't be able to choose that. So as we leave and enter the Nobles District now, there are a couple different things that will happen. We first will gain the clue token that's listed on the path that we're leaving, not the one that we're going on to. So we have yellow tokens here. So both Sir Sanch as well as Kara, because that's one of the colored clues they're looking for, will gain one of those clues. Additionally, when you go on to the specific tile where it labels the tile, it'll also tell you what else you gain. For example, we have a point of interest here noted by this little exclamation mark sign, and we do actually have some characters that interact with that. So for example, Renholder has additional rules. When you enter a new kingdom card with a point of interest, you can place a Lux token from your knight sheet on this. If you do, you can reveal the top kingdom from any kingdom deck. And the Lux token is just a knight-specific token that Renholder has, which are these little mage tokens that he can actually utilize or gain on his knight sheet by using ability cards and other things. But we don't have any Lux tokens, and again, just to keep this relatively brief in the grand scheme of things, we're not going to be adding any Lux tokens. However, you can sometimes find clue tokens by the label here, and so you would gain those as well. So you could potentially gain clue tokens from the path that you're leaving on, and as well as the tile that you're leaving on. But there's no clue tokens for this. We do also have to resolve our threat. So you can see here we get +1 threat because it's a medium-sized card. So we go up to 2, and so we'll just want to make sure to keep our eye on that. Additionally, now, I don't think the rulebook specifies this what happens when you gain a card and the path that you're heading from is also showing a Panzer Gate, but I do believe that anytime a Panzer Gate shows up, you will pop a Panzer Gate token that essentially locks you out of that. Now, we do have some ability cards and stuff like that can get rid of those, so it's not the end of the world. However, it is something that you want to make sure to be careful of. So after we've done and resolved the clue tokens and we have gained them, we are then, of course, going to go to the next step, which is the exploration step, which we're drawing and resolving exploration cards. So, of course, this is the first delve phase, so we're going to grab from the first deck, and we're going to flip that over and see what it is. So we have Follow the Meat, Resolve. So this is Fleischritter's kingdom-specific card. or Kingdom Adventure card. So we have to resolve a Kingdom Adventure. Fleischritter is the party leader for this adventure. He gains 2 Vigor or places 1 meat token on his Knight sheet. So he's already at max Vigor, so there's no reason for us to gain that. So we'll actually gain a Fleisch token, which it's sort of again, just like the Lux token, a Knight-specific token that he can use to like heal and activate other abilities. So yeah, so now we need to resolve a Kingdom Adventure. And Kingdom Adventure is just on this D100 table of things. So we are going to grab a white and a black dice, and we're going to designate the white dice as the 10s spot and the black dice as the 1 spot, and give that a roll and see what we get. So we got a 3 and a 6, so it's going to be 36. Also, let me just, the dice rolling's a little bit floaty, so let me just adjust the gravity here. I generally like to roll my dice on Tabletop Simulator demo, or on Tabletop Simulator, so increasing the physics makes it a little bit so they don't fly all the way off the table. So we got 36, so we're going to look and see what 36 is. So we have 1 for Sorrow, and we are going to go to that story encounter, and we know Fleischritter is the party adventurer here. So 1 for Sorrow. As you sit by your campfire hunching to try and banish some of the chill of the evening, you become aware of a subtle noise in the branches above you, a low croak followed by the ruffling of feathers. You look up to see a crow perched on a bare branch, its beady eye glimmering orange in the firelight as it tilts its head to look down on you. There's a fluttering of feathers, and another crow alights next to the first, and another. Soon, a small flock has gathered, all transfixing on you with their glares. So as a group, now we can choose. We can choose to chase them away, which we will gain 1 curse level, but 1 knight gains Mystic Clue, or we can ignore them, where we actually increase our threat by 2, and 1 knight gains 1 martial clue and the fear condition card. And the fear condition card isn't the greatest. There are some condition cards that you can see over here. When you start the Tabletop Simulator demo, they'll all be 1 in 1 big deck, so you might just want to separate them out. But the fear card here lowers our precision. However, if we are able to wound with that condition on us, we actually can discard it and gain a positive outcome of that. So we're like overcoming our fear, essentially, is what that represents. However, the fear token in general is something that I would probably want to avoid. Additionally, we have no clues really that we care about more than another. Like both the Mystic Clue and the Martial Clue are sort of equally valuable right now. So I think we're going to go chase them away. There's a reason why, and again, this is as a group, so you have to choose here. So chase them away. There's a reason why a gathering of the Corvids is called a murder. You feel uncomfortable with such an ill portent over your head. Taking up a stone, you fling it at the nearest bird, missing by a hair's breadth, but it is enough to send the feathered fiend swooping away, his kin soon following him. The air around you fills with indignant squawks before, as quickly as they'd arrive, the crows are gone. Still a little unnerved by the encounter, you turn in for the night. So we do gain a +1 curse and level. However, what I think I might do is I do know that Renholder here, he's got some pretty cool abilities. And this one here, is it Renholder? Oh, actually it might be Kara. I think it's Kara. Again, like I said, there's a lot to manage. So Kara has this ability called Daughter of the Wild. So when you are about to gain curse, you gain 1 heat instead to ignore up to 1 curse gain. And heat is one of the different stats for a character, and it's sort of it's mainly what it's used for is going to be your reroll mechanic. So it allows you to reroll attack rolls, tests during narrative parts, and evasion rolls. However, there are some downsides to that. As you gain more heat, you are going to be potentially putting yourself in more danger, especially when it comes to clashes and stuff like that, where enemies will generally do more damage or have a bonus effect if you are at too high of a heat. Now, there is a refresh status for each character, so during the fight, not the delve phase, but during the fight, every time at the start of your turn, you're going to actually refresh a certain amount of heat. So you can keep that down over the fight. However, it is still something to be mindful of. You can also, of course, not gain over your heat limit. So if you do happen to get maxed out, when it comes to these narrative events, or if you want to try and use a reroll, you just won't be able to because you'll be maxed out on heat. However, in this case, I do want to keep my curse as low as possible. We have some heat to spare, so I'm going to gain 1 heat. We are going to use this card to ignore that curse gain. And so because this little icon here has the X in the top left showing its timer for refreshing, it actually goes in the discard. So we actually won't get that back until after the first clash phase and when we rest. So that is going to be that. So we've also got a clue from that as well. If I can... Oh, looking at the wrong books. Again, there's a lot to manage. So we also can choose 1 night to gain a Mystic Clue. So we do know that both Renholder and Fleischritter are looking for Mystic Clues. Let's give it to Fleischritter because he was the party adventure leader for this adventure. So we'll reward him with that. So that is going to resolve the exploration step of this first turn. And then we have the activation step. So we can use abilities and trigger a boss clash. We don't have to worry about that boss clash thing for now. However, we can look through our hand and use any abilities that we want that don't have a specific activation window like that one that we just previously used. So for example, Inspire, we actually only can use that on the rest step or rest phase of the game, which is after the first clash phase. This inside info is only relevant when you're about to move on an unexplored kingdom card. However, what we might want to do is go to Renholder, and I think we're going to use one of his cards. We're going to use Empower, so we can gain 1 heat to place this card on your play area. And then at the start of each subsequent delve round, you're going to be placing a Lux token on this card. Then if there are 3 or more Lux tokens here, you discard this and put in your discard pile and move the Lux tokens on your sheet. So it's sort of gaining power over time during the delve phase. And then once we actually discard this and get those Lux tokens on our night sheet, we can then cash them in for different things with our different abilities or whatnot. So we're going to gain 1 heat because that's part of the cost for this. And then we are going to leave that on our night token or a night sheet. As for everyone else, I think we're just going to be, again, keep things relatively speedy. We're going to just not worry about that. Actually, no, we're going to use Fleischritter because Fleischritter also has something similar. Well, actually, no, he actually got a Fleisch token from earlier. So we could use the Smoked Backlin, or Dacklin, so we can actually raise our threat level by 1 to get another Fleisch token. Or we can actually spend our Fleisch token and discard this to actually increase our heat limit, which actually might not be a bad idea. You know what? He has a pretty low heat limit, and he does like using heat for like activating his attacks and stuff like that. So I think we are actually going to use our Smoked Dacklin. Now, this has a little moon icon, so that actually goes into our sync discard pile. So this will actually refresh pretty much at the start of the first clash phase, since that is the soonest that something can be refreshed. So we're going to do that. We're going to get rid of our Fleisch token, and we are going to increase our heat by 1. So great. That early Fleisch token that we got paid off. So that is going to be that. We're done. We're just going to say everyone's done using their abilities. And then so we then go to the end step, which is passing the party leader token and proceeding to the next round. So we're going to pass it over, and now Renholder is going to be the next up in line. Now it's going to be Renholder's turn. This is going to be a new delve turn. So because he has the Empower card, this is the next delve round. So we're going to take a Lux token and place that on the card here. And then we do the same process. So we have, first we are looking for our travel steps. So we can look for available pathway. We can't go back the same way that we came in because a Panzer Gate locked in behind us. We do have some abilities that can get rid of that, but I think we're going to save those because, again, they are a limited resource essentially. So we can either go upwards, which is going to give us a small icon, which is going to be harder to progress our stories. However, we can reduce our threat. Yeah, just make sure I didn't have to increase threat or whatever. And then we can go left for a errant clue and also go a medium, or we could actually resolve a large card. And let's see, we're only at 2 threat right now. We're at 1 curse. I think we're in a pretty good spot to resolve a large card. So I think let's move everything over a little bit, make enough room, and we're gonna go downwards and we're gonna resolve a large card. So we're gonna take one of these large tiles, we're gonna reveal it, and we're gonna place it and align the appropriate pathway. And then, so you can see here, so again, we have to resolve our tokens. So we get the tokens of the path that we're leaving on. So we get everyone who is applicable gets the yellow historic clues. So that's going to be Kara and Renholder. So Kara gets another, oh, that was the wrong one. Kara gets a yellow token, and Sir Sanj, sorry, not Renholder. Sir Sanj gets another historic clue. And of course, as we are getting clues, you're going to always wanting to be making sure you keep track of your different special rules and objectives. Because, for example, now that we have 2 historic clues for Kara, during the delve progression, so pretty much at any point during the delve part, if you have 2 or more historic clues, you may resolve any one of these. So, for example, because we moved onto a large tile, we could resolve one of these, which I think is like a noble's district. Oh, actually, no, it has to be a specific thing. So there's certain tile cards that you can potentially resolve special narrative encounters, assuming you have the appropriate amount of clues. Additionally, for example, Kara has one where if we encounter a dead end, we have to resolve this. So always make sure whenever you gain clues or lose clues, you're just sort of keeping track of your special objectives for that specific character. Again, I'm going to miss that. I'm not going to worry about that for now. Again, we're just going to sort of focus on the gameplay and the general game loop. So we've gotten the token from the path that we've left. We also resolve what we get from the card we're landing on. So the Hands of Hall, because it's a large card, it actually does raise our threat level by 2. So we're up to 4 now. Getting a little scary. And then we also actually get a martial clue, because there is a martial clue on here. So anyone who is able to get a martial clue, so that's Fleischritter and Kara, they're actually able to get each one of those. Making sure. Yeah, so for Kara, we actually need to gain 4 clues and 4 yellow clues and 2 red clues to end when the boss clash to actually sort of fulfill her special objective. But again, we'll not worry about that. Again, there is also one more icon. It's a little bit tough to read. The developers have mentioned they are going to be, of course, slowly improving the accessibility and visibility of the iconography on these cards. The cards in Tabletop Simulator demo are actually already the updated version from the physical prototype that other content creators got, which I actually contacted the developers, and there is a small chance I actually might be able to get my hands on the physical prototype copy for review. So hopefully, fingers crossed, I can show you guys a physical video of this, and we'll do maybe a live Let's Play. But this is the boss clash icon. So now we know we've sort of figured out this is where we can actually draw the boss out, which in the demo is going to be the Egg Knight over here. And so in the second delve phase, after we've fought the mob clash and completed that, in the second delve phase, we actually need to look and maybe backtrack to this card or find another card that has this icon, because that is going to be where you trigger the boss clash. So there. That is all the things we resolved relating to the tokens. Now we're going to, of course, resolve our encounter for Renholder. So again, drawing from the first deck, we have Panzer Pit. Place a Panzer Gate on all paths on your current kingdom card, except for the one you used to travel onto it. As well as a lot of these encounters you can see at the bottom there, depending on what your threat level is at, you can potentially gain a lot of negative stuff as well. So if we were at 6 or higher threat, we would actually gain a curse level on top of that, which is really, really bad. So a lot of this game is sort of managing stuff and sort of balance. It's a balancing act. All right. So we got to take a Panzer Gate and place it on every tile. This is pretty bad for us because it sort of either forces us to backtrack or use an ability to get through. So we have to place it on every path that is not the one that we came in on. So now we're sort of locked in here. Now, if there was another encounter card or something like that that actually resulted in us locking this one behind us and we didn't have a way out, again, that would be another lost state and our entire delve would be a failure. So again, something to pay attention to. So we resolved our encounter card. Now we can use our abilities. Now we do have an ability with Fleischritter. Is it Fleischritter? Here it is. Actually, Kara. It's always Kara. So Kara has Coordinate, so which is we can lose 2 Vigor, which is their health, or discard this card to remove 1 Panzer Gate, which might be something to consider. We also do have Run with Fleischritter. So in the travel step, so in the next turn, we can actually lose 2 Vigor to just perform an additional additional travel onto an Explored Kingdom card, so we can actually skip 2 spaces. That sort of helps us when backtracking to make it not as painful, because again the main thing is trying to get clues, and that is going to be the main way you progress your character, right? So if you're backtracking and exploring or going onto pre-explored tiles, you actually don't raise your threat or curse level, but you also don't gain any clues. But you still have to resolve an encounter card. So the timer still ticks down, but you're not really gaining anything from it. So that's something to pay attention to. So we do have a medium tile over here. We have a small tile going down. However, this tile would actually give us a curse level. So we got to watch out for that. And then we have another medium tile to the left here, which gives us an errant token, errant clue, but we also gain a curse on top of that. We actually might want to go to the right here. It would be raising our threat level. We're going to be going up to 5. However, after that, we can maybe focus on going to small tiles to reduce some of that threat. And although that being said, we do have enough historic clues for some people anyways. So maybe that is something that we don't want to worry about too much. Maybe we do want to try going for somewhere else. So, maybe backtracking isn't the worst thing. But either way, we have to sort of decide if we want to use the coordinate here, because this is the ability portion of the delve phase. So, you know what? Just to sort of speed things up, we're just going to say, yeah, screw it. So we can either lose 2 vigor or discard this card. We do have to... Oh, also one of the icons here, you can see this refresh icon is not listed on the card. That is going to be sort of an instant refresh. So this card can actually go back to your hand. If we end up not discarding it, we can just lose the 2 vigor, and this card actually instantly refreshes, so it goes back to our hand, which is good because, again, like I mentioned, these are dual-sided, so we do want to try to save some of these abilities for the clash phase. But we're going to just say screw it. We're going to discard this, and we're going to remove a Panzergate. So let's just remove let's remove this one here. We are going to gain a curse, but screw it. We're going to try again. We're trying to maximize our clue gain, and we already have enough yellow clues, so we don't really want to get too many of those. And that's going to be the active or ability portion of this step. I've done activating all the abilities I want to. We're going to then go to the end step, so the token gets passed to the next person, and a new turn begins. At the start of this turn, of course, Renholder's Empower would trigger. He would get another Lux token, and then so on and so forth. Then we would rinse and repeat. We would reveal a new tile, move on to it, gain whatever is listed on the path we're leaving, as well as gain any additional things on the tile that we're moving on to, resolve our encounters, and so on and so forth. And you would keep doing that until you get to the very end of the first exploration deck. Once you're done actually getting the, once you've depleted the exploration deck, the next time you would draw an exploration card, you would then start the clash phase. And so we're just gonna say that we did that. Again, there's a lot of different factors that would have happened. We would have obviously used a lot more resources. We would have had potential story things, positively or negatively affect us. But in the sake of time, I'm not going to be going over every single thing. I will, like I said, I will be doing a full run of this down the road, but we just sort of want to introduce you to sort of how to play the game. So on the Tabletop Simulator demo, once you're ready to go onto the Clash phase, there's a handy dandy button here. You can just pop this, and then everything on the Delve side will actually move. Anything in this rectangle here will actually move over onto the Clash side, which is a super, super helpful thing. Gotta love technology, am I right? Because boy, oh boy, this game's going to be a lot more painful to handle in the physical version. All right, so once we have done that, we are going to set up the different mob body parts. So, so that deck that we have essentially built earlier, we sort of pre-built the Clash deck. We're going to give that a shuffle, and then we are going to place one card on each of these spaces at the top, and these are going to represent the different mob standees. And normally when you're doing the boss fight, these BP cards would actually represent different body parts of the main boss, and they would also represent how many wounds that boss will receive. However, in this case, each of these mob standees essentially only has 1 health, and this will represent sort of what that mob is. That mob might be like a smaller minion, if you're getting higher level, they might be like a commander knight or something like that. So you won't know until you reveal them when you actually attack them, or through other means like abilities and stuff like that. So that is going to be setting up that each of these standees will also have a number, just sort of to represent which one at the top track they are. You're also going to want to grab 2 tokens to place on the first 2 cards. These are essentially going to be who activates during the enemy round, and of course, just like many of these boss battlers, enemy will always be going first unless otherwise stated. So the enemy will activate 2 standees by default, and then it'll be the night phase of the round. And it's just going to alternate between, the enemies and the knights. And again, just like in something like Kingdom Death Monster, during the night phase, anyone can activate in whatever order they want to. They, of course, just have to complete their turn before moving on to the next one. But it's up to you to decide to sort of whatever is the most tactical approach. You're also then, of course, wanting to shuffle the AI deck. So there's only 6 cards in the level 1 AI deck. And each time that you hurt the enemy, essentially removing one of the standees from the board, it's actually going to escalate the enemy where a level 2, let's say you defeated a level 1 mob, you're going to be swapping in a level 2 and escalating the difficulty of the AI deck. And, if you defeated a level 2, you're going to be putting a level 3 card in and swapping that out. So again, this sort of goes along one of their core, I guess, pillars of combat is escalating for both sides. So while the knights will escalate as well through heat, through passion, which we'll get to in a little bit, but as they're escalating and they're gaining new abilities as they're getting more injured, the same is going to go for both the knights, or both for the mobs and the bosses. So that's going to be sort of what you're going to be keeping track of. For the mobs, only the AI deck is going to be escalated. But for when you get to the boss fights, both the body parts cards and the AI cards will be escalated in the actual boss fights. Let's see. Again, there's a lot to manage. So if I do make some pauses here and there, I'm just sort of trying to make sure I'm not forgetting any of the core aspects of the game. So I do apologize for that. So next up, you're going to also want to look at the sort of enemy card. So we're going to be fighting Ironcast Dead. So in the bottom right, there'll be a little story thing. They're a mob enemy. So there's going to be varying different degrees of enemies in the game. In the final version, of course, there's going to be like dragons, there's going to be devils, vassals, bosses, so on and so forth. So this is a mob enemy. And the jaws of fear bit hard into the people of the principality, and they sought refuge in plates of iron and chains and steel, and the fabled automail of the Weisgeiser? I probably butchered that. Family. For naught the curse did not spread by touch. They died like they lived, in their armor. What manner of witchcraft animates them now? So, the main thing you're going to want to take note of is on the left side is going to list their specific enemy abilities. And they're also going to list sort of the level. So by default, of course, you're going to start at level 1. If you want to replay the demo, you can upgrade their level for better rewards and stuff like that. So we're at level 1. So the first icon here is going to be the 2 hit value. So all of the mob standees will have the same thing. So whenever we attack with our knight, including all of our modifiers, when we attack with, we're going to be looking for a 7 or higher to actually get a successful hit on them. They have 5 movement each, and again, just like in other boss battlers, you can only move cardinal directions, so left, right, up, and down. And then on the right side is going to be their wounds. So these are the total amount of wounds we have to deal to the mob as a whole to actually complete this encounter. So even though there are 8 standees here, we really only need to defeat 5 of them to actually finish. And as we defeat them, we place them into this wound stack to keep track of who we've defeated, essentially. They also list what traits are available at that level, and then underneath we'll give a more descriptive answer to exactly what those traits do when you encounter them on like the AI cards or the BP cards, for example. So for this level 1, we only have to worry about Gang Up, Swarm, and Ironcast. So always keep note of that. We don't have to worry about the counter trait for that. We can also choose where we want to place the different knights. Again, just in the sake of time, we're not really going to be thinking of strategy, so I'm probably not going to be playing these couple of turns the most efficiently. It's just to get you up and running. All right, so after you're done that, you are essentially ready to go. Making sure all your tokens and stats are in the right order. We are then going to move on to the first enemy round. So the enemies, like I said before, the enemies start. So you're going to be drawing the first card from the top of the AI deck and seeing what the first mob does. So you're going to be working left to right. So these little tokens will just keep track of who activates. So after they've activated, you're going to be placing them at the top of the next most mob, essentially, after this one. So, and then that'll refresh, and next round, these two will go. So we're going to be activating for standee number 1, which is listed right here. We're going to be drawing the top AI card, and let's see what we get. So again, if you've played Kingdom Death, if you've played Aeon Trespass Odyssey's demo on Tabletop Simulator, you know sort of how these AI cards work. On the top right is just going to be the reminder of which level of card this is. Of course, it is listed on the back as well. So this does also give you a level of preparation. So when you do start escalating the deck, you are able to sort of see the top cards. So you're able to prepare ahead of time, like, oh, okay, so next time this person activates, it's going to hit really, really hard. So we got to prepare for that. And the top right is going to be the attack profile. Now, by default, every single enemy does their attack and sort of quote unquote hits you. It's your job to evade the attack. So the value on the top right is going to list how many evasion dice you're going to be rolling and the target number of the evasion that you have to hit. So including all of your modifiers, like some armor, for example, or some abilities might give you a bonus or a negative to evasion, and you'll just want to take that into account for your dice roll, of course. And then we're going to resolve the different targeting options from top to bottom and try to fulfill the whatever is the soonest thing that we can fulfill. We're going to do that. So the first thing is going to be, it's going to target the closest engaged knight in range. So we already know that the Ironcast Dead have a 5 movement. So this mob is going to look to see who's in front. It's going to be the closest. It's going to be the closest engaged knight in range. However, engaged just means adjacent to another mob enemy. So no one currently is engaged. So that is not something that we can fulfill. So we move on to the next line. So then we have closest knight in front in range. And in front just means if you drew an imaginary line in front of the standee, anything in front of that line would be considered, in front. And then in range just means if it can move and be adjacent to you, that's considered in range. So that can either be Fleischritter or Sir Sanche, because they are both equally spaced away because they're both 3. So this mob, if they targeted Fleischritter, they would go 1, 2, 3. Or if they went for Sir Sanche, they could go 1, 2, 3. So in this case as well, right now, Kara is holding the priority target token. When you actually attack, you gain passion. And then you'll actually see if you have the most passion, and you'll end up gaining the priority target token. So whoever has attacked the most essentially will end up usually with the priority target token. But right now, Kara is the one with it. However, that is only used for like deciding ties and stuff like that. Because again, you're just still defaulting to whatever it says on the target. So in this case, we get to choose. And let's just choose Fleischritter. Why not? We'll go 1, 2, 3. It's going to move up adjacent, and then it's going to be move and attack. Now, you can see a little icon to the left of move and attack. That is going to be a place for reaction abilities if you want to. So, for example, let's say, I believe some of our... Oh, also one thing we forgot to do. We'll also want to make sure to flip all of our ability cards over, including the ones in our discard piles, to the clash side of the card. Again, like I said, there's a lot to manage, so I'm going to be missing some things, and I do apologize for that. So we're going to look, and we're going to see if anyone has a reaction. So for example, let's see, we can actually have a reaction here. So this is a reaction. So this is one of the cards that would be applicable to use during that sort of break point on the card. So after the AI has targeted, we could then use a reaction card to do something before they actually move and attack. And that won't really matter in this situation, but let's say, for example, we were actually over here, and this knight would have, or this mob would have to move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They would have to actually move their max amount of distance to get to Fleischritter. What we could do is, after they've targeted Fleischritter, we actually potentially use a reaction card or something before they move an attack to move Fleischritter 1 space. Now, what that would mean is that after that reaction is resolved, they would then move an attack, but they would still be targeting Fleischritter. So they would have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. However, in this instance, because we sort of dodged out of the way thanks to that reaction, we are actually at a range now, so they actually would not be able to resolve their attack. So this is sort of another little thing that if you've played Kingdom Death Monster, you probably are familiar with this sort of kind of strategy to avoid attacks entirely and to sort of manipulate the AI. So this is that's sort of what those little breakpoints are is for reactions. However, in this case, it's not going to matter because they do have enough movement to get near us, even if we move 1 space away. So they're going to move and attack. So we're going to 1, 2, 3. They're going to attack. Each hit does 1 damage or 1 vigor, and it also has Swarm 1. So we want to make sure we remember what the key card or keyword there is. It's going to be Swarm X. So attacks with this keyword do plus X damage for each other mob adjacent to the attacker. So let's say, for example, this mob was actually by Fleischritter as well. That would be +1. So for each successful hit, it'd be an additional +1 damage. So that would be very, very bad. We're rolling 2 dice here. There's 2 attacks we essentially have to dodge. So that could be resulting in 4 damage if if we missed everything. But in this case, we only have the 1 mob, so there's no extra damage associated with this, which is nice. However, then they are going to attack. So we're going to roll our 2 evasion dice because it's our job to get out of the way. The modifier or the target number that we're looking for is an 8 or higher. So Fleischritter is going to grab 2 of these dice. Now, for rolling both attacks and evasion, you're always going to roll the white dice. Even if you're only rolling 1 dice, just make sure you're rolling the white one. That's going to be your critical dice. So if you get a natural 10 on this, you're going to have a crit chance. Now, depending on certain abilities, certain gear, things like that, you might get benefits for, critically evading or critically attacking. But you might not always get something. It's just a critical chance for, something beneficial to happen. In this case, we don't really have anything related to getting critical evades, so we don't have to worry about that. However, we are going to roll our 2 dice. We're looking for an 8 or higher. We have no gear that's going to give us any evasion bonus, so we're just looking for a straight up 8 or higher. Let's see how lucky Fleischritter is. We get a 5 and a 4, so not very lucky. So we are going to take 2 damage. However, we do have the option to re-roll. So this is, again, like I mentioned earlier, this is where the heat comes in. So you can re-roll. So from any source, each die can only be re-rolled once. However, we also do have to decide how many dice we want to re-roll and cash everything in at the same time. So if we want to re-roll both of these dice, we have to spend 2 heat, or gain 2 heat in this case, to reroll both of those dice. What we couldn't do, for example, is we couldn't spend 1 heat, reroll 1 dice, and then see if we want to reroll the other one. You sort of have to cash everything all at once. So, I don't really want to take the 2 damage. Let's just say I'm going to spend 2 heat. We're going to bring Fleischritter up to 2, and we are going to reroll both of these dice and see what we can get. We got a 7 and a 4, so we still unfortunately failed both of those. We were looking for an 8 or higher, so we are going to take the 2 damage. However, we do have this dented breastplate. So if you are wearing armor that is going to give you armor dice, you can see in the top right there, we get 1 armor dice from this dented breastplate. And this is one of the things that I actually, I don't know, everyone seemed to get wrong in their playthroughs on YouTube. It seemed like even the developer playthrough that I saw with another content creator, I think they actually forgot to roll the armor dice. It seems like everyone forgot to roll the armor dice. However, we do have armor dice, and this is potential to subtract the damage from our hit. So after we've seen how much damage we actually get after our rerolls, we can roll one of these red dice, because we only get 1 armor dice from this, and we're looking for that broken chalice symbol, and that's going to result in a reduction of 1 damage. So, however, unfortunately, we did not get this, and these dice are also something that we cannot re-roll, at least not in this situation. So that is unfortunately going to be it. So we are going to take our 2 damage, and then after you take damage, you're going to want to reference your peril arc. So again, this is another one of the escalating features of this combat, is the lower that you get on health, the higher your heat limit actually goes, but also closer you are to dying, because there's different cards called Mortis cards, as well as Judicium cards, that will provide mostly negative, but also potentially positive effects depending on what you draw. So after you've reduced your damage, you reference your chart. So you can see here we have 8 to 12 vigor left. So that means we have to draw a minor Mortis card, but our heat limit actually goes up to 3. Now, because we actually used our Fleisch token earlier to increase our heat by 1, we actually don't end up changing this. It doesn't go up to 4. So we just leave it at 3 because that's what our heat limit is. But, if once we get damaged again and we go down to 3 to 7 health, then we would bring our heat limit up to 4 and, so on and so forth. However, we don't change our heat limit. We just stay there. So we have 8 to 12. So we're going to be drawing a minor Mortis card, which are these cards here. So they have varying degrees of levels from 1 to 3. And then you have your Judicium cards, which are the very, very bad cards. When you're actually at 0, it doesn't mean you're actually necessarily dead. Now, in the demo, they only have the 2 cards. They either have you live or you die, so there's a 50-50 chance you actually end up dying. In the final game, of course, just like Trespass Odyssey, they will have multiple kinds of Judicium cards, so there's varying effects that can potentially happen. However, we just have a minor card we have to draw, and we will resolve that for Fleischritter. So we have Misdirection. So this is a Renholder specific one. Interesting. I actually haven't seen this before. So you place 2 cantrip tokens on the night pool. So this is actually a positive outcome. You actually get 3 cantrip tokens if Reinholder is the one actually getting injured here. However, we are getting hit with Fleischritter is the one getting hit here, so we only place 2. Now, these cantrip tokens are going to be relating to the co-op tokens that are in the game. So we can see 2 cantrip tokens. This night pool will end up being a pool of co-op tokens that we can resolve during our attacks to give us varying degrees of buffs. Now, this is one of the really, really cool things I love about this game is the cooperative aspect is really focused here, where let's say I attack with Fleischritter, or I got damaged as Fleischritter in this case, so I ended up getting the night pool 2 cantrip tokens. Cantrip tokens are just a special kind of token of that when you declare your attack, you can choose to turn them into either break tokens and opening tokens. And opening and break tokens are probably the most common tokens you'll encounter. Opening tokens will just give the next person's attack a positive bonus to hit for each opening token. And then break tokens will just give them a positive chance to wound when they actually get to the wound step of the attack. But we don't have to worry about that right now. And again, you're not going to know a lot of these symbols offhand, so just make sure if you want to, in the main rule book at the very end, there is a keyword section that actually shows all the different icons. For example, here, there's a cantrip. So during the second ability window, you can place X cantrip tokens in the night pool, and then during declaring attack, change each cantrip token in the night pool to either opening or break, depending on what that person wants. So it gives a little bit of flexibility. This is a lot of where the fiddliness comes in, I think, with the combat, and it's going to be something that you're going to have to just learn on the fly. Again, I'm sure they'll improve the smoothness of how this goes, but until you actually read through the whole cantrip section and know sort of what is available during the first ability window or the second ability window, you're just going to want to make sure to sort of keep a copy of this part open. So we're going to resolve that Mortis card, and this card is just going to go back essentially on the bottom of the deck, or you can make a discard pile if you want to, either or, but I think it actually does say go on the bottom. All right, so that is gonna resolve that. So that is gonna be a full sort of attack from this bony embrace. Now there are gonna be times that this attack might have an after attack, so after they've done their damage, they might be, they might push you, they might manipulate you on the board, they might knock you down. The different varying after attack effects that you would also resolve. So just make sure you pay attention to that. But that is going to be one attack from that. And of course, I'm just trying to go over all the details so you know as much as possible. Attacks, of course, will go much, much quicker as you play more of the game. So that is going to be the first attack. So Fleischritter got a little bit injured. Fleischritter got knocked down to 11 health. And yeah, we're going to do the second enemy activation. So again, for this mob phase, 2 mobs get to activate. So we're going to activate for standee number 2. So standee number 2 is on the left side here. Again, we're going to draw an AI card and we're going to see what it is. So we have a mass. So man, I love the art on these cards. Very, very Monty Python. Oh, let me just drink some water here. So on the typewriter, we have 3 evasion dice we have to roll. We're looking for an 8 or higher. It's going to be targeting the closest engaged knight in range. So because of the previous attack, now Fleischritter is the only one who is engaged. So we are going to be able to fulfill that. So they're going to target Fleischritter. We then have an interruption point, and then they're going to move and attack. There's not really anything I can do here that's relevant, or at least not that I know of. Again, I'm not going to go through every single knight ability and see if I can. So we are then just going to move and attack. So we're going to go here. And each hit does 1 damage. However, this has Swarm 1. So because of our Swarm ability here, it gets +1 damage for each mob adjacent to the attacker. We already have another mob adjacent, so every single hit is going to be an extra damage. So rather than each hit does 1, each hit now does 2 damage. So this could be a potentially very deadly attack. So then we're going to resolve that first. So, and then of course we can see afterwards there's another interrupt icon and then a knockdown, but we'll get to that later. So we're going to be rolling our evasion dice. We have 3 dice to roll here. We're looking for a 8 or higher. So again, we're always rolling one of the white dice as one of our dice pools for evasion dice. And we're looking for a 8 or higher. So this could be pretty bad for Fleischritter. We got a 1. Oh, but we did get a 10 on the critical dice, which would count as a critical evade. Now, like I said, we don't really have any abilities or items right now that are relevant to that. However, we would have gotten sort of an extra bonus. We did get a 1 or a 2, so that counts as 2 hits total. I do have a heat left. This is a pretty deadly attack, so I think I am going to spend my last heat. Why not? We'll max at our heat, and we will re-roll one of these dice. And we got a 5. So unfortunately, we still failed, so we are going to take 2 hits, and because of the swarm ability, each of those hits does 2 damage. So that is going to be 4 damage total to Fleischritter. You can see how this is not an easy game if it's not obvious. So very, very dangerous there. Now, luckily, Fleischritter does have some ways to gain health back, but unfortunately, because I used my Fleisch token earlier, I don't think that's possible. So we do actually get knocked down as well as part of the attack. Now, knockdown is a special condition card that we have to draw down here. So now Fleischritter is knocked down. So this card says when you're knocked down, or you are knocked down. So you cannot perform any voluntary movement, attacks, movement, or use active abilities unless their effect allows you to stand up. So, for example, Kara has an ability that she could actually spend heat or gain a heat to make another knight stand up. So that would be, of course, very beneficial to use once it comes to the knight's turn. And then if this card is discarded by another effect like that one that we just mentioned, we can stand up. However, at the end of your next turn, flip this card over, which we would get to standing up phase. So it's sort of just like a 2-step process to represent you sort of essentially missing your turn unless you somehow get rid of this card. But we are still knocked down, so that is going to be what we're living with. And now this card actually does have an after effect a thing associated with it. So now we resolve that. If no other knight is in zone 2, escalate the lowest revealed mob, both the AI and the body parts. So like I mentioned earlier, normally through attacks and stuff like that, you only escalate the mob AI. However, this specifically is going to escalate the lowest unrevealed mob. So for example, in this case, I believe you go from the leftmost, if I'm not correct. So because this is the one of the lowest level, we would actually escalate this mob to a level 2, making him even harder to actually damage. However, this is only if no other knight is in zone 2, and zone X essentially represents all the spaces around a particular mob. So we know that Ironcast Dead 2 is the one associated with this, and it's zone 2, meaning every square 2 spaces away from Ironcast. So it'd be sort of a 2-square box, and that also includes diagonal spaces. So it's a full 2-square box around that mob. It counts as zone 2. If it was zone 1, it would only be the all the squares right beside, and so on and so forth. However, we do have actually both Sir Sanch and Renholder in zone 2. So luckily, we don't have to worry about that. There's, we have supporting knights, so we don't have to worry about escalating the lowest unrevealed mob. So luckily, Fleischritter was not alone there. And that's going to resolve our second attack, and that is going to be it. So at the end of the enemy round, we're going to place these activation tokens onto the next 2 available cards, and so these 2 are going to be the next to activate in the next enemy round, essentially. But now it's the knight's round. So like I mentioned, so it's asynchronous, so anyone can activate their knight if they want to. Up to you to sort of discuss with your friends on who should go first, who should go next. A lot of this, especially when it comes to the knight pool and the opening tokens and different cooperative tokens, a lot of it is planning. A lot of it is discussing. Again, this is not going to be a game for you if you don't want to play things a little bit on the slower side. This is not a very fast game. It is very, very tactical, and lots of different things you have to consider when, moving, attacking, so on and so forth. But we're just going to, again, go through an example couple of turns. I'm probably not going to get through, because this video has been long enough, I'm not going to get through activating every single person, but we're going to start with Kara, because why not? Because then we can use the abilities here. Unless otherwise specified during your turn, you can use your abilities as free actions. So every knight gets a movement action and a combat action. So pretty straightforward, similar to Kingdom Death Monster. So unless otherwise specified, so for example, like this knight roll only can you use on a reaction, you can use them as free actions before or in between. You can't use them during. So you can't use them like in the middle of an attack, for example, but you could move, use an ability, and then attack if you wanted to. However, we're just going to go straight up. We're going to go use Inspire. So we're actually going to gain a heat to make another knight stand up. So we're going to be able to discard this knockdown card and get Fleischritter up so he can actually take a turn this round, which is very, very important. You want to sort of maximize the amount of damage you can do, because again, we want to try to eliminate 5 mob standees to get out of here, essentially. After we've used the ability, we of course want to take a note of what kind of refresh timer it has. This one has a little hourglass icon, so this has to go into our delayed phase. Oh, one thing I also actually forgot to do is the first step is actually refreshing. So you can see at the start, you can see at the top of your stat night sheet, you can see your hand limit, but you can also see both your card refresh and your heat refresh. So your card refresh just talks about how many cards move from your delayed phase, or sorry, your delayed pile to your sync pile, or your sync pile to your hand. Discards, like I mentioned, can only be gained back by resting, I believe, so we actually won't be able to use these throughout the rest of the Clash fight. There is also a heat refresh, so Kara here is able to refresh 3 heat at the start of her turn. So she'll actually go down to 0, which is really, really nice. We also do get to refresh 1 card. However, we have nothing in our delayed or our sync pile, so you don't have to worry about that. So now our turn sort of officially starts. We're going to use our Inspire card. Again, like I mentioned before, we're going to gain that 1 heat to make Fleischritter stand back up, and we're going to place this in our delayed step. So at the start of our next turn, this card will actually move to our sync, and then we'll have to, go through another turn to actually get this back in our hand. Hopefully that makes sense. We also have some specific abilities here. Each character has their own unique ability, and they all also have Rush as a common ability amongst all of them. So also make sure you want to pay attention to that. But I think we are ready to do our movement and our combat action. So we have Kara down here at the bottom. So looking to see, we have at the bottom here, we have standing number 7, 6, and 8. We know those aren't activating for a while. However, we do know that number 7 is actually a level 2 BP mob, which means that it's going to be a lot tougher to actually damage this. And it's also going to potentially have some more negative sort of reactions against us. So maybe we want to focus on either 6 or 8 because they're going to be a little bit easier to deal with. Again, we only have to defeat 5 of them total to actually win this fight. So let's go for 6 because 6 is actually going to be activating first. So we can use our movement. We have as Kara, we have 4 movement total. We could also, if we are enough spaces away, 1, 2, 3. We are 3 spaces away. So we could actually use our rush ability, which uses both our combat action and our movement action, plus gains us another heat, so we would go up to 2 to move an additional movement, but also we get to attack with Auto Break 1, and Auto Break 1 is just a cooperative token ability where during our first ability window, we can actually utilize a break token for our own benefit because they actually get emptied out, the Night Pool does, for some of the cooperative tokens, because generally most of the time a lot of your tokens you're going to be leaving for the next person's attack. So auto break just means something that can be beneficial for yourself. So you have to move at least 3 spaces and reach your target via the shortest path possible. You know what, let's go all out. Why not? Let's give ourselves a heat. We're going to spend both our combat and our movement, and we're going to get an extra movement, so we have 5 movement total. However, we only need to move 3 to get the effect off, so we can go 1, 2, 3, and we're going to attack number 6 here. Now, when you attack, you're going to declare what weapon you're using. We're going to be using our dull spear here. Everyone also does have sort of a backup weapon called knives. This is a very basic weapon. It's essentially like using your fists, for example. So just bear that in mind. We're going to be using our pulled spear. It's a 2-hander. You can see in the top right just sort of denotes how many hands it uses. You can see its monetary value at the bottom. It also has the abilities underneath. So it has unwieldy reach 2. So we can actually attack up to 2 squares away. However, because it's unwieldy, it just means that we have to have those 2 spaces in a straight line. And then it has opening 2. Again, most of your time you're going to be leaving stuff behind in the second ability window, which is actually after your attack. So opening 2, we don't have to worry about for now. However, because we utilize the rush ability, we have auto break 1. So during the attack phase, again, there's a handy dandy cheat sheet here, so you can look at the bottom here. So you declare attack and your active weapon. You raise. Next step is to raise your passion, and you check your priority target token. So passion here, we're going to raise it by 1, which unlocks our first level of our heroic arc. And again, every single time you attack, you're going to be gaining passion, you're going to be gaining more abilities, and these are cumulative. So if we were at level 3 passion, for example, we would get the benefits of the level 1 line, the level 2 line, and the level 3 line. If there's a little middle break icon for a line, that just means you have to choose one of those options. And again, you're not going to know these symbols offhand, so make sure you leave the rule book open so you can reference the different images to sort of know which of those abilities you can activate sort of on certain times, because not all of them are relevant during each step. Level 2, for example, is a power dice reroll, so that's only when you're wounding. These icons are break and opening tokens, so those are only for the second ability window. However, you have the hug icon here, which you can actually use earlier than the second ability window. So in the first ability window, so there is, again, this is sort of where some of the fiddliness comes in. But, you know, it's more about just playing it and learning over time. Because, again, you do start to memorize these things the more that you play. So we are at level 1 now, so we've unlocked that first line there. We've declared our attack. Now we have to check the priority target. So we do have the highest passion right now. So we already have the priority target token, but let's say, for example, Renholder had it. If this attack raised our passion to be the highest passion, then we would end up gaining the priority target token. So just keep that in mind. So that is the next step of our attack. So then we are going to do the attack roll. So the attack roll, you're going to look at the weapon that you declare you're attacking with. You're going to be rolling the amount that's listed on the weapon, so which is 2 dice. And then it's going to have a potential attack modifier, which is that middle number there. So for example, we have +1 to this attack. We already do know from the stat card from the Ironcast Dead that we're at the top there with the little eye on the sword. We're looking for a 7 or higher to hit, but because of this, we are looking for a 6 or higher. One thing we also forgot to do is because we are declaring our attack now, we can turn these cantrip tokens, thanks to Fleisch Ritter getting hit, we can turn these into either opening or break tokens. I think, because we already have the +1 here, I think we are only getting 1 power dice from this, we sort of want to make sure we get as many power dice to wound as possible. So maybe we'll get 2 break tokens instead. Make it as easy as possible to wound. So we're going to exchange those for 2 break tokens, and we can utilize those during the later portion of the attack when we actually wound. Well, actually, no, because we actually have auto break, but thanks to our ability earlier, let's split it in half. We'll have 1 opening token and 1 break token. So, yes, that is going to be that. So then we are going to be getting our dice listed on our card. Again, always making sure one of our dice is the white dice. We're going to roll, and we are going to see what happens. Let's just make sure we didn't miss a step. Oh yeah, so then we do our attack roll first, and then we do our ability window afterwards, our first ability window. Ooh, so we have a 5 and a 4. Now, we do have a +1 to the Dolt Spear, so that's actually 6 and a 5. Unfortunately, that's both still misses because we were looking for a 7 or higher. Now, that being said, we do have our first ability window, which is generally where we can cash in some of our stuff that's in the night pool. So we can actually cash in our opening token here for a +1. Now, actually, let me just double check. I don't believe it is for, I'm trying to remember if it's per dice, if I can find it. Opening. During the second ability window, okay, so during the attack roll step, every opening token in the night pool adds +1 to the result of each attack dice. Okay, so it is each one. That is very, very good to know. So we have 1 opening token here. If we had 2, it'd be +2 to all our dice, but we just have the 1 here, so we can cash that in for +1 to all of our dice. And again, you're generally always want to utilize these because, again, after you're done your attack, these are going to go away unless otherwise specified. So you're just going to want to make sure to use them. So now this is a 7 and a 6 because we essentially have +2 thanks to the +1 already from our Dolt Spear. So we actually do have 1 successful hit. I do have 1 heat left over. I could actually use a heat to re-roll this critical hit dice to potentially get another, but I don't really think I want to max out my heat at the moment. So I think we're going to wait on that. We do also have the ability to hug, which is one of our first level heroic arc abilities, which you can sort of see on here. It's going to be this little icon here. So if you're adjacent to an enemy during any modifier window, so this could be used during this ability modifier window or the second one, we can move X spaces cardinally or diagonally. Each space you move to must be occupied and adjacent to an enemy. It just allows you to maneuver a little bit on the board. However, if we do that one, because we have to choose which side we want to use, we would be using the opening token as well, and leaving that at the, looking at the wrong one, and leaving that at the end of our second ability window. But I think we're going to just wait. We don't have to worry about that yet. And we'll just go with our one attack that we successfully got thanks to this 5+2. So after that, for each successful hit, you're going to be building your power dice. So we have 1 by default. Every character naturally gets 1 thanks to their character sheet. So we have 1 there. We have 1 successful hit on our dulled spear. So we have another one. So we have 2 total. One thing I forgot as well is, that's actually after. After we've done our first ability window, we have to draw our BP card. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself here. So we are attacking number 6. So we're going to flip over 6 and reveal that. So this is going to tell us who we're hitting in this case, or what this standee actually is. This standee is just a simple bone squire. So that big number with the shield is going to be their armor value. So this is going to be the number that we have to hit with our power dice, or the amount of successful power that we have to successfully wound them. If you have the over symbol there, or the over symbol underneath, that just gives us a potential benefit depending on how much we've damaged them. So in this case, if we get 2 or higher, on top of the 2 that we require to actually wound them, so we would need 4 total power to actually, get this bonus off, we would actually be able to leave an additional power behind, or additional automatic break or wound for a future hit. Additionally, while this BP is revealed, all knights have -1 precision. So because we attacked and revealed this, everyone has -1 precision now. So if we don't end up killing this bone squire, that means everyone's future hits are going to be harder to hit. So that's going to be very, very bad. So we're going to want to make sure to try and kill this. Now you can see underneath that as well, it's going to be the reactions from it, depending on if you wound, if you fail, or if you actually got a critical chance hit. Because when you attack, if you got a critical on that critical dice and you successfully wound, you would resolve the critical portion of this, which would also override the wound and the fail, which is very, very nice. But in this case, we just have the wound and fail. We did not crit. So now we build our power dice. Like I mentioned before, we have the 1 from the dulled spear, 1 from our character sheet. So we have 2 total. And we're going to be rolling this, and we're going to be trying to get as many swords as possible, because that's going to total our amount of power we have for this attack. And yeah, let's, fingers crossed. Ooh, that is going to be, unfortunately, fortunately, we got only one successful power. However, we do have this, chalice icon, and this is going to, oh boy. Let me see which number it is on. There we go. This icon is going to be what we can change from a fail into a hit with break tokens. And luckily, because of earlier, we were able to put these break tokens in. Also, we actually had the auto break token as well, which would have actually, in the first ability window, we actually would have got an additional break token. So I actually forgot to do that. So we have essentially 2 break tokens we can utilize. However, we only rolled 1 chalice symbol, so we only have 1 potential thing to use there. So we're going to get rid of one of those break tokens and turn this into a power, essentially resulting in 2 successful power, which is going to be enough to deal the 2 that we need to destroy this bone squire, luckily. So we do have a wound there. So the wound reaction is going to be reveal the leftmost unrevealed body part. So it's going to be this one right here. So we're going to reveal this. It's going to be a man at bone. So now we have some extra information. We know that standee number 1 is going to be, it's going to require 3 power to hit. It's going to have this amount of information. So luckily we didn't get anything bad. Like this card, there are other cards that will have, negative things that happen, or potentially beneficial things that happen when that body part is revealed. But luckily that one didn't reveal anything too noteworthy. So that is going to be that. So we've successfully wounded. We've done that, and we've resolved that response, which was the next step after the power roll. So then we do the wounds and escalation. So now that we've wounded this, we're essentially going to take this body part card and count it as our first wound, We're also going to remove the standee from the board. Of course, when you're in a boss fight, the boss fight is just going to stay there. Of course, it's not going to be removed, and these body part cards are just going to keep stacking. These are going to keep track. Once you get to 5, that's going to be the total amount that we need to win, and then we need to do our escalation for, like I mentioned before, for the mob fights, you're only escalating the AI deck unless otherwise specified. But for the boss fights, you would be escalating both the BP and the AI deck. So for escalation, you're going to take the, you're going to see what level of BP you destroyed, essentially. So we destroyed a level 1. We have a level 1 AI card here. So that means we're going to take out a level 1 AI card and we're going to put in a level 2, essentially making this stronger. We're going to give it a shuffle. I'm just going to say a predetermined. We're going to shuffle it 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because, you are able to see the top of the deck. So you're going to want to make sure to try and shuffle it like underneath the table or something, just to make sure you don't shuffle it in a way where you shuffle the weaker cards on top. But we know there's going to be a level 1 next, so it's not going to be too bad. And so that's going to be the escalation there. And there's more information in the rulebook on how to escalate, if you attacked a level 2, or if you're already at a level 3, for example. But of course, we won't get into that in this video. So after the wounds and escalation, you're going to clear the night pool. So this break token, because it wasn't used, we couldn't use it. However, this essentially gets thrown away. There are some tokens in the game that end up staying through each knight's turn, so you can benefit them later on. However, in this case, we're going to refresh the night pool. We're going to clear that out, and we're going to essentially make it ready for the next person. So after you're done clearing the night pool, you then get the second ability window, and this is where the majority of your cooperative tokens are going to come from. So because from earlier we have our heroic arc here, we're gonna choose to leave a break token. We're going to choose the left side on that level 1 heroic arc there. So we're going to leave 1 break token from there. Additionally, because of our weapon, we have opening 2. So that is going to be another thing we will resolve in our second ability window, where we're able to resolve 2 opening tokens, essentially making it so the next person's attack is going to have +2 to their attacks, which is super, super useful. So this is a lot of, again, where the cooperative aspect comes from in the game. And that is essentially going to be 1 full night turn. I know it seems like a lot. I know I talked a lot, but again, I wanted to cover as much as possible while still sort of keeping the game flow open for you. And that is going to be that. And that is going to be Kara's turn. So then it would essentially, we would choose the next person. So we could potentially choose Fleischritter because, we stood him up. So he could potentially go next, and so on and so forth. So hopefully that makes sense. And, let's just say, for example, we did start with Fleischritter. Again, we would want to refresh his heat. He has a refresh 3, so we would refresh him down to 0. His sync cards, he has 1 card refresh, so he only can move 1 card between piles. He only has 1 card here, so this would actually go into his hand now. And, oh, interesting. These actually have different refreshes depending on which phase they're in. Interesting. But yeah, that's essentially how that would work. So hopefully you understood most of that. That is going to be the game. That is going to be essentially the main game loop. You would essentially go on until you ended up defeating the required amount of standees to defeat them, which in this case is 5. And then you would actually go back and you would start the delve phase again, or continue the delve phase, however, utilizing the second exploration deck. And during that time, you would want to make sure to find the boss tile card, the one with the skull symbol here, and activate the boss fight before that exploration deck runs out. Because if this gets to 0, if the second exploration deck gets to 0, the next time you would draw an exploration card, you actually do end up losing, because you essentially get lost and lock into this deep fog and into the ever-changing city in the Principality of Stone. And then you would activate the boss fight. Now, I'm not going to go over in the boss fight because A, this video is gone long enough, and B, for the most part, the setup and the way the fight works is generally going to be the same thing. The Egg Knight is going to have his own set of AI cards. It's going to have its own set of BP cards or body part cards. You're going to have the level here. I think by default it's level 1, but if you want to make it easier, you can make it level 0, or if you want to make it harder, you can make it level 2, which they'll of course gain and lose different traits as you increase or lower the difficulty. There are certain special trait cards you'll have to pay attention to here. And you'll reference the rule book to determine exactly how to set up that fight. But in terms of like the way combat works, it's generally going to be the same with some very, very minor changes. But Maybe if people want a more thorough breakdown of just specifically the boss fight, let me know. But otherwise, I'll probably end up doing like a full playthrough of this demo, sort of once I play it a little bit more. Because again, there are some things that I probably missed, some things that I might have gotten incorrect. But I wanted to focus on the main aspects of each part of the game, just so you can sort of get up and running as soon as possible. And then I'll leave it up to you to dive into the rulebook to find some of those more niche situations. And of course, more importantly, discover the narrative, because the writing in this game is actually really, really good. I love the stories in this game, and the narrative part of it, I'm actually looking forward to the most. It's going to be very, very interesting seeing sort of the background of these different characters and sort of what their goals are and what drives them. And then as you actually play the game more, and depending on how many clues you got and how actually well you successfully got in your special objectives, you can actually unlock new things. You can unlock new abilities, like, for example, these peril and heroic arcs. There's actually alternate versions of those, and they actually sort of are almost like classes in a game. So you can see at the top there, for the different characters, they have different names associated for these classes, which will augment, what your heat limits are for your peril arc, what special abilities you have for your heroic arc. So that's sort of, again, where the roguelite elements come into play. But that is going to be it. Hopefully you enjoyed this little introduction to, well, not little, hopefully you enjoyed this introduction into Kingdoms Forlorn. Hopefully it helped you if you were sort of unsure of how to dive into this game, or if maybe you were struggling with reading the rulebook yourself. Hopefully it answered some of the questions you have of the general game loop. And I'll be looking forward to diving in with, I'm actually got a session planned with some of my coworkers on Sunday to actually play a full 4-player game of this. So I'll get a better idea of what this game offers. Because again, playing it solo was quite fiddly, trying to manage all the narrative arcs and abilities and trying to memorize everything. It was a lot. So I didn't even get through a full playthrough of this on my own, because I was mainly just trying to get a gist of the rules for this video. But that'll be for another time. I will be doing a playthrough of this, though, for sure in the future. Again, fingers crossed the developers can get a prototype copy to me, because I would love to play this with my real-life friends, not over Tabletop Simulator. So fingers crossed that can happen, and I can give a better first impressions. I don't really like saying that it's good to do a review of the prototype, because I mean, this game is so early on in its development, a lot of this is going to change, but they've got a really, really solid foundation here. I'm super, super excited from what I've seen, and this is going to be a love it or you hate it game. I see a lot of people already turned off by a lot of the things in this game, even some of the art. A lot of people are like really, really down on the art, and they don't like it. I personally love it. I think it's fantastic art. I like the silliness of it. It's a good counter to a lot of the serious tones of the game. And even the writing is fairly lighthearted in some aspects as well. But it's just like Kingdom Death Monster. A lot of these big epic style games, it's going to be either it's for you and your play group, or it's not for you and your play group. But luckily for me, I'm 110% down on this. I think this is going to be shaping up to be one of my favorite games out there. Again, very, very early first impressions, but those are my very, very early impressions. But until next time, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.